When I asked my son about his new house, he laughed and said, "Dad, you weren't on the guest list. We only invited people who fit our lifestyle." 3 weeks later, he texted me asking for $20,000. I replied with 2 words that changed everything. "I'm glad you're here." Follow my story to the end and drop a comment with where you're watching from. I want to see how far this reaches. My name is Harold, and at 64 years old, I thought I understood how the world worked. I'd spent 40 years as a carpenter, building houses for other families, dreaming about the day my own son would have a home I could be proud of. I never imagined I'd discover that home through a stranger's Instagram post. It was my neighbor's daughter, Megan, who showed me. She was visiting her mother next door when she knocked on my door that Sunday morning, her phone already in her hand. "Mr. Patterson, I had no idea Derek bought such a beautiful house." The housewarming party looked amazing. Those photos are gorgeous. I stared at her, confused. "Housewarming party?" She turned the screen toward me, and there it was. My son Derek, standing in front of a massive colonial-style house, his arm around his wife Vanessa, surrounded by at least 40 people holding champagne glasses. The banner behind them read, "Welcome to our dream home." My chest tightened. When was this? Last Saturday, according to the post. "Look at that kitchen! And the pool in the back. Your son really made it, Mr. Patterson." Last Saturday, my son had celebrated buying his first home, a milestone I'd dreamed about sharing with him since he was a boy, and I knew nothing about it. I thanked Megan, somehow closed the door, and called Derek immediately. Voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. My hands were trembling as I scrolled to find Vanessa's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice light and casual. "Oh, hey, Harold. What's up? What's up? I just found out you and Derek bought a house and threw a party. Nobody told me." There was a pause. Then she sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Yeah, it was kind of a last-minute thing. We only invited people who, fit our lifestyle. Derek's colleagues, my book club friends, some people from the country club. We didn't want anyone there who might make things awkward." Make things awkward. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Vanessa, I'm his father." "I know, Harold, but let's be honest. You're a retired carpenter. You drive that old pickup truck. Derek's trying to build connections with people who can help his career. Having his blue-collar dad there, asking people what they do for a living, would have been uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. I had become uncomfortable to my own son. I thought about my calloused hands. The same hands that had taught Derek to ride a bike, that had built him a treehouse when he was 7, that had worked overtime for years to pay for his college education. Those hands were now too rough for his champagne parties. "Where's Derek? I want to talk to him." "He's golfing with his boss. Very important networking opportunity. I'll tell him you called." After she hung up, I sat in my living room, surrounded by photos of Derek growing up. His first Little League game, his high school graduation, the day he left for college. In every photo, I was there beside him, proud and present. But I wasn't in the photos from his housewarming party. I wasn't anywhere in his new life. The thing is, Derek's mother passed away when he was 12. Cancer took her fast, only 8 months from diagnosis to the end. After that, it was just the two of us. I turned down a foreman position that would have meant more travel because I wanted to be home when Derek got back from school. I skipped fishing trips with my buddies to attend his basketball games. I took out a second mortgage to pay for his business degree, and now I was someone who would make things awkward. I started thinking back, trying to pinpoint when things changed. Derek met Vanessa 4 years ago at some corporate event. She came from money, old money, the kind that came with expectations about which neighborhoods you lived in and which clubs you belonged to. At first, Derek still called every Sunday. We'd talk about the Packers, about his job, about life. But slowly, those calls became shorter. Then they became every other week, then monthly, then only when he needed something. I remembered a dinner at their old apartment about 2 years ago. Vanessa had looked at my flannel shirt and asked if I owned anything more refined. Derek had laughed along with her. "Dad's old school, babe. That's just how he is. Old school. Like it was something to apologize for. The pattern had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Derek finally called back that evening. His voice was casual, almost bored. "Hey, Dad. Vanessa said you're upset about the house thing. I found out you bought a house and threw a party from a neighbor's daughter, Derek. She saw it on Instagram." "Yeah, well, it was really more of a networking event than a party. Vanessa's idea. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. Lots of corporate talk, fancy food you wouldn't like." "You don't know what I'd like, Derek. You didn't give me the chance to find out." Silence stretched between us. "Look, Dad, I'm trying to build something here. A life, a career, a future. Sometimes that means making choices about who fits into that picture. And I don't fit. It's not about fitting. It's about being strategic. Strategic. My son was being strategic about whether to include his father in his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the things I'd sacrificed for him. The vacations I never took. The truck I kept repairing instead of replacing so I could put money in his college fund. The retirement savings I dipped into when he needed help with his wedding 3 years ago. The wedding. That should have been my first warning sign. Vanessa had insisted on a destination wedding in Cabo. I'd paid $15,000 for that trip, money I'd been saving for years, because Derek said it was important to Vanessa. At the wedding, I'd been seated at a table in the back, with distant relatives, while Vanessa's family sat at the front. I'd told myself it was just wedding politics. I told myself it didn't mean anything, but it did mean something. It meant that I was already being pushed to the margins of my son's life. Something shifted inside me that night. The hurt was still there, sharp and deep, but underneath it, I felt something else growing, a quiet determination to understand exactly where I stood. I had no idea that within weeks, I would discover that the housewarming party was just the beginning of what they'd been hiding from me. The text came 18 days after I learned about the house. I was in my garage sharpening my old tools, something I did when I needed to think, when my phone buzzed. It was from Derek. "Dad, need your help. Emergency. Can you send $20K? We'll explain later." $20,000. No greeting, no context. Just a demand for money, like it was nothing. I typed back, "What's this for?" His response came fast. "House stuff. Unexpected costs. Vanessa's handling it, but we're short. Need it by Friday." I stared at the screen. $20,000 in 4 days. As if I had that kind of money sitting in a drawer somewhere. I called him immediately. "Derek, I don't have $20,000 to just send." "Dad, come on. You've got savings." "I know you do. You've always been careful with money." "Careful with money means I don't have $20,000 to hand out without knowing what it's for." "I told you, house stuff. There were some issues with the inspection that we didn't catch. Foundation problems. It's a whole thing." Foundation problems. On a house that looked brand new in those Instagram photos. "How much did you pay for this house, Derek?" Silence. "Derek, that's not really your business, Dad. It is if you're asking me for $20,000. More silence. Then, $850,000. I nearly dropped the phone. $850,000 for a house. My son, who I knew made decent money but not that kind of money, had bought a house worth almost $1 million. "How did you qualify for that mortgage?" "Dad, can we not do this right now? I just need the money. Are you going to help or not?" Something in his voice made me pause. It wasn't the voice of someone dealing with unexpected house repairs. It was the voice of someone who was scared. "Derek, what's really going on?" "Nothing's going on. I just need help." That's what fathers do, right? Help their sons? I told him I'd think about it and hung up. That night, I did something I should have done years ago. I started paying attention. I logged onto my bank account and looked at my statements from the past year. What I found made my blood run cold. There were transactions I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there, all labeled as transfer to D. Patterson. But they added up. Over the past 14 months, nearly $4,000 had been transferred out of my savings account to someone with my son's name. I didn't authorize those transfers. I had never set up any automatic payments to Derek. My hands shook as I called my bank the next morning. After being transferred 3 times, I finally reached someone who could help. "Mr. Patterson, It looks like those transfers were set up through your online banking portal about 14 months ago. The authorization came from your account. I didn't set up those transfers. I barely know how to use online banking. Sir, someone logged into your account using your credentials and set up recurring transfers to an account belonging to Derek Patterson. Do you recognize that name? My son had been stealing from me, $50 at a time, so I wouldn't notice. But over 14 months, it had become $4,000. I felt sick. I called Derek again. This time, my voice was different. Derek, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What? Have you been taking money from my bank account? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Dad, I can explain. Then explain. Vanessa set it up. She handles our finances, and she said you'd agreed to help us with monthly expenses. She said you two had talked about it. I never talked to Vanessa about any monthly payments. I never agreed to anything. Another long pause. Look, Dad, maybe there was some miscommunication, but the money helped us out. We were struggling, and you weren't using it anyway. I wasn't using it anyway. Like my savings, my security for retirement, was just money sitting around waiting for someone else to take it. Derek, that's $4,000. I know, and I'm sorry about the confusion. But right now, we really need that $20,000. We're in trouble, Dad. Real trouble. What kind of trouble? The house. We're behind on the mortgage. 3 months behind. If we don't catch up, we're going to lose it. 3 months behind on a house they'd celebrated with champagne and catered food just weeks ago. A house I wasn't invited to see because I might make things awkward. How are you 3 months behind already? You just bought it. We've had expenses. Furnishing the house, the country club membership, Vanessa's car lease. Things add up. Things add up. They'd been living far beyond their means, keeping up appearances for their fancy friends, and now they expected me to bail them out. Derek, what happened to the money I gave you for your wedding? What do you mean? The $15,000. You said it was for the wedding costs. Silence. Derek, some of it went to the wedding. And the rest? Vanessa needed a new wardrobe for her job. First impressions matter in her industry. $15,000 for a wardrobe. While I was driving a 15-year-old truck and eating dinner alone in a house I'd paid off through 40 years of honest work. I'm not sending the $20,000, Derek. Dad, please. We're going to lose the house. Then maybe you should have bought a house you could afford. He hung up on me. 2 days later, Vanessa showed up at my door. She was dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly pension, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Harold, we need to talk. I don't think we do. Please. Derek's too proud to come himself, but I'm not. We're desperate. I let her in against my better judgment. She looked around my living room with barely concealed disdain, taking in the furniture I'd built myself, the worn carpet, the TV that was at least 10 years old. Harold, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. You told me I'd make things awkward at my son's housewarming party. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. That came out wrong. What I meant was that it was a networking event, not really a celebration. It looked like a celebration in those photos. Look, Harold, the past is the past. What matters now is that your son needs you. Isn't that what family is about? Family is about honesty, Vanessa. Family is about respect. You've been stealing money from my bank account for over a year. Her expression flickered. Just for a second, but I saw it. Fear. That was a misunderstanding. Derek thought you'd agreed to help us. Derek told me you set it up. He said you told him I'd agreed. She recovered quickly. There must have been some confusion between all of us. But Harold, that's water under the bridge. What matters now is saving Derek's future. Don't you want your son to succeed? I want my son to be honest. I want him to treat his father with respect. I want him to live within his means instead of expecting other people to fund his lifestyle. You're being selfish. I almost laughed. I'm being selfish? I paid for his college. I gave him money for his wedding that apparently went to your clothes. I've had money stolen from my account for over a year. And I'm selfish because I won't give you $20,000 more dollars? Vanessa's mask dropped. Gone was the concerned daughter-in-law. What I saw underneath was cold and calculating. Fine. You want to play it this way? Let me tell you something, Harold. Derek chose me. He chose our life together. If you want to be part of that life, you need to contribute. Otherwise, you're just some old man he has to feel guilty about. Maybe he should feel guilty. He won't. Not if I have anything to say about it. You think Derek really cares about Sunday phone calls and family dinners? He cares about success. He cares about the life I've shown him he can have. You're a reminder of where he came from, and nobody wants to be reminded of that. She left without another word. I sat in my living room for a long time after she was gone, processing what she'd said. Derek chose her. He chose that life, and somewhere along the way, he chose to leave me behind. The next few weeks were quiet. No calls from Derek, no texts from Vanessa. I changed my bank passwords, set up alerts for any transactions, and tried to move on with my life. But I couldn't stop thinking about the $4,000. The wedding money, the housewarming party I wasn't invited to, the years of sacrifice that had apparently meant nothing. Then one Thursday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Patterson, this is Detective Rivera with the county sheriff's office. I'm calling about your son, Derek Patterson, and his wife, Vanessa. My heart stopped. Are they okay? Has something happened? They're fine, sir, but I need to ask you some questions. Can we meet in person? An hour later, Detective Rivera sat in my living room. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. Mr. Patterson, we've been investigating Vanessa Patterson for several months. Her name has come up in connection with multiple cases of financial fraud. Financial fraud? She has a history of targeting family members for money. Before your son, she was married to another man. She drained his father's retirement account of over $60,000 before the family realized what was happening. I felt the room tilt. How many people has she done this to? At least 3 families that we know of. The pattern is always the same. She marries into a family, identifies the most vulnerable financial target, usually an older parent, and systematically extracts money through a combination of small thefts and larger emergency requests. I thought about the $4,000, the wedding money, the $20,000 Derek had asked for. She's been stealing from my bank account, small amounts, over the past year. Detective Rivera nodded. That's consistent with her pattern. She starts small to test the waters. If no one notices, she escalates. And Derek? Is he involved? That's what we're trying to determine. Your son may be a victim here too, someone Vanessa has manipulated into participating in her schemes. Or he may be a willing partner. I thought about Derek's voice on the phone. The excuses, the demands, the way he defended Vanessa even when confronted with the truth. I think my son knows what his wife is doing, I said quietly. I think he's been helping her. Detective Rivera looked at me with something like sympathy. That's possible. Would you be willing to press charges? The question hung in the air. Press charges against my own son? Can I think about it? Of course. But I should tell you, if you don't press charges, Vanessa will likely face minimal consequences, and she'll probably find another family to victimize. After the detective left, I spent 3 days thinking. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just sat with the question of what kind of man I wanted to be. On the 4th day, Derek showed up at my door. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days either. His expensive clothes were wrinkled. His face was pale. Dad, I need to talk to you. I let him in. We sat across from each other in the living room where I'd read him bedtime stories 30 years ago. The police contacted me, he said. They told me they'd been to see you. They told me about Vanessa's history, the other families she's stolen from. Derek put his head in his hands. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Didn't know what, Derek? That she was stealing from my account? That the money you've been asking for was part of a pattern? I didn't know about the other families, about her past, but you knew about my money. You knew she was taking it. Silence. The longest silence of my life. She told me you'd agreed to help us. She showed me texts between you two, messages where you said you wanted to contribute. I never sent those texts, Derek. I barely know how to text at all. He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's eyes before. Confusion, fear, and underneath it all, the dawning realization that he'd been fooled too. "She faked them," he whispered. "She faked the texts." "Probably. Dad, I'm so sorry." "Are you sorry because you got caught? Or are you sorry because you hurt your father?" He started to cry. My grown son, 34 years old, crying in my living room like he was a child again. "I don't know anymore. I don't know what's real. She told me things about you, Dad. She said you were jealous of our success. She said you wanted to hold me back. She said the only way to have a good life was to cut ties with the past. And you believed her. She was so convincing. And the life she showed me, the house, the friends, the parties, it seemed like everything I'd ever wanted. Was it worth it? Losing your father for a house you can't afford?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The answer was written all over his face. "What are you going to do, Dad? Are you going to press charges?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the little boy who used to follow me around the workshop, asking questions about every tool. I saw the teenager who'd cried in my arms when his mother died. I saw the young man who'd hugged me on his wedding day and promised we'd always be close. But I also saw the man who'd excluded me from his life, who'd let his wife steal from me, who'd demanded money while treating me like an embarrassment. I'm going to tell the truth, Derek. Whatever the police ask me, I'm going to answer honestly. That could mean jail time for Vanessa, maybe for me too. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let her steal from your father. He stood up, wiping his eyes. I understand. I deserve whatever happens. Do you, Derek? Do you really understand? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. I'm leaving her. I've already talked to a lawyer. I want out. Because of what she did to me? Or because you're afraid of the consequences? Both, I guess. But mostly because I looked in the mirror this morning and didn't recognize the person looking back. I used to be someone, Dad. Someone you were proud of. Somewhere along the way, I lost that. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay. But I couldn't, because I didn't know if it would be okay. I didn't know if we could ever repair what had been broken. That's a start, Derek. But words are easy. What matters is what you do next. He nodded and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. Dad, I really am sorry. Not just about the money, about all of it. The party, the phone calls I stopped making, the way I let her talk about you. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you deserved. Then he was gone. 6 months have passed since that day. Derek divorced Vanessa. She eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and received 2 years of probation plus mandatory restitution. She's already moved on to another state, probably looking for another family to exploit. Derek and I are talking again. Not like before, not yet. But we're trying. He comes over for dinner once a week now. He asks about my life, about my projects in the garage, about the fishing trips I'm finally taking. He's living in a small apartment now, one he can actually afford. He's learning what it means to earn something instead of expecting it to be handed to him. Is it enough? I don't know. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. But here's what I've learned through all of this. Family isn't about blood. It isn't about obligation. It's about respect, honesty, and choosing to show up for each other even when it's hard. I've also learned that the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. Sometimes people need to fail. Sometimes they need to hit bottom before they can start climbing back up. My son hit bottom, and now he's climbing. I'm 64 years old, and for the first time in years, I have hope. Not because everything is fixed, but because the pretending is over. We're building something new, Derek and me. Something honest. It won't look like the relationship we had before. It can't. Too much has happened. But maybe it can become something better, something real. And if it doesn't work out, if Derek slips back into old patterns, I know now that I'll survive. I have my house, my tools, my neighbors who actually care about me. I have a life I built with my own 2 hands. That's worth more than any champagne party I wasn't invited to. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got more stories coming that I think you'll want to hear.